Hi, I'm Coach Amber, and welcome to the Meet RX Success Story podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Amy. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So, Amy, tell us what was going on in your life prior to you starting a meat-based diet? Like, what made you want to change what you were doing? Were you having any health issues? Did you, what was your reason?
Yes, definitely. Great question. I was having a lot of health issues. Pretty much most of my life, I have struggled with some autoimmune issues. Very, very young at an early age, I actually had an outbreak of psoriasis, and basically my whole body was covered in red patchy scales, from head to toe. I don't know what initially set that off, but throughout my life, I've had, little patches show up on my skin here and there. And then several times throughout my life during, stressful times or who knows what exactly why, but, I've had kind of an outbreak where my whole body has just been covered in these red, really painful, awful scales that I've had to deal with and try to live life normally with. And obviously that has led to lots of dermatology visits, lots of doctor's visits, trying to figure out what on earth is going on and how to fix them. Obviously their solutions are usually immunosuppressant medications that I was unwilling to take. Always been quite health conscious, and I felt like every other area of my life I was, really focused on being healthy. I'm very active and always tried to eat fairly well, but just could not shake mainly the psoriasis. Not only did this affect my skin, but it also affected my joint health. I have, technically arthritic psoriasis. So my joints were inflamed consistently. I remember there being days where I would wake up and I couldn't even open my hands. It would take me just a really long time to get going, in my younger years. So, that's been a big challenge throughout my entire life. On top of all of that, I've had, pretty much lots of little things that I never really thought much about, but they started adding up about 10 years ago. I just started noticing, extreme muscle fatigue after a workout. Rather than just being sort of sore, I was extremely sore after workouts. I noticed lots of joint pain. I've had bad knees my whole life, but I was starting to feel as though my joints were deteriorating. And I should also mention that during this time, I was actually moving more toward like a plant-based approach in my eating style. And so I noticed myself just a few years ago hardly being able to walk up and down the stairs. Again, even though I'm very active and feel very strong and healthy in every way, that was starting to wear on me quite a bit. I have struggled with constipation my whole life and just digestion issues in general, lots of bloating and just discomfort. And I could never quite dial in what exact foods were the problem source for me. And just always, again, felt like my stomach was uncomfortable and never could process my food well. I've struggled with candida in the past and yeast infections and all kinds of overgrowths as far as that goes. And so obviously something is not working right in my gut. Let's see, I've had cold sores and dry and cracking lips, dry hair and nails, and, just in general, dealing with a feeling of not being healthy and could never really pinpoint what those things were. A few years ago, I started really noticing that I was having like almost like mental issues where I felt like I couldn't quite remember things, or I was feeling slightly depressed, even though that was never really something I've dealt with before in my life. Having some mood swings, feeling just foggy headed and had a hard time functioning when it came to my work. Very disorganized in my thoughts. So my brain just didn't feel like it was firing properly for me. And then I also started to notice, things like receding gums, and then, just being sick all the time. I was getting sinus infections or colds, anytime anything's going around, I've picked it up. My whole life, I've actually had sinus infections about 4 times a year. So anytime the weather changes, I'm sick and just having to, be down and out for a couple of weeks, not feeling well. So that's basically been most of what I've dealt with my whole life. And again, I saw those things progressively getting worse. And even though, again, I felt like I was becoming more quote unquote knowledgeable around my health choices, my health was not getting better. So that's what I was dealing with.
That's kind of a lot that you were dealing with. Wow. So how did you implement the carnivore diet? What did you start out eating, and what do you eat as a typical day now? And is there anything that you found within the meat-based arena that you can't have, like for instance, well, or should I say the carnivore, like dairy and eggs? They're not meat, but and have you had any transitional issues when you first started?
Yeah. So I first of all found out about this through my sister, kind of long story, but really this was a couple years ago. It's about 2 years ago when I felt very confused about the whole thing. Because again, there's a lot of again, knowledge that I thought I had around the plant-based way of eating. And so I had to really shift my mindset around that. So I did start, timidly, I guess you could say, where I ate everything that was animal based. And so was eating a lot of eggs and a lot of dairy and a lot of these other things, thinking that I needed to have all of that in order to get the nutrients that I needed, or even just to satisfy cravings or whatever that might be. So I did start out mostly just focusing on beef and I guess I started out eating just about everything. So beef, chicken, pork, eggs, dairy, and I guess and fish. And kind of, yes, had some digestion issues, but my body had to change how it digested all of that food. So I would say for about a month, I really felt almost worse for a bit. I immediately started to feel better when I shifted my diet within a few days when it came to my thoughts and my mental capacity, like what was going on up here was improving, and my energy levels were improving. And I just started to feel a little healthier in my body, but my digestion issues took about a month or so to sort themselves out. And then it kind of just happened suddenly, like, where I just became, all the bloating went away and I didn't have any more discomfort. I haven't had any digestion issues whatsoever, or discomfort, bloating or any of that in like 2 years now. So that's amazing. But over time, I didn't quite see my autoimmune issues shifting. So I saw all these other things improving, but I noticed that my autoimmune issues, my psoriasis, the parts of my body that I felt like were struggling the most, those were not really getting better. So I just started experimenting with cutting back more and more and more, and eventually cut out eggs, cut out chicken, cut out pork, and cut out dairy. And so I pretty much was eating beef, some organ meats, liver basically, and fish almost exclusively. So just beef and fish, salt, water, a little coffee here and there. And that, within a couple of weeks of doing that, my psoriasis pretty much went away completely. And I have yet to notice any changes or problems with that since. So that was the biggest thing for me, was cutting out all that other stuff. And then over time, I've kind of gradually added some things back in. But what I would say is if I notice anything, or if I feel myself having any issues, going back to, good cuts of salmon and nice grass-fed, grass-finished red meat, and liver and salt and water is about, it's kind of a reset in a way.
Awesome. So you mentioned some of the improvements, like your digestion and the psoriasis and all. But what other things did you notice once you implemented the carnivore diet? What are more changes that you can talk about?
Great question. So I noticed my body composition changing. So again, even though I've been in fitness, I've been, I've worked out most of my life. I noticed I could work out less and not really lose my strength and my body composition that, I used to have to work so hard for. So I was able to kind of relax into that a bit and just enjoy the fact that I knew I was eating foods that were only what I really needed and nothing more than that. And so my body is just kind of stabilized when it comes to my weight. And again, my strength levels, I feel like I've been able to maintain that without working out harder. Another thing I've noticed is I was having a lot of skin issues around my mouth, hormonal probably happening. And after a few months of carnivore, I did go through some, it was almost like my body had to cleanse that out. But once that cleared up, I haven't had really very many more skin issues whatsoever. So my skin has improved quite a bit. I've noticed like just, again, my hair, nails, just joints, all of that have felt amazing. I just, I'm 40 this year and I feel my joints are healthier than they ever have been. So I feel just like young and capable of jumping, which is, something I couldn't have done 5 years ago. So I would say I just feel better. My mood has improved drastically. I feel just like I have a general more positive outlook on life. I've never thought that I've had a negative outlook on life, but I definitely feel like I just feel calm and happy and generally just have a positive outlook on life rather than a more anxious, stressed outlook on life.
That's some pretty major benefits right there. So how long have you been carnivore?
I would have to think about that for a second, but I think I'm coming up on 2 years right now. 2 years ago I started, and I will say that it probably took me a full year to really understand what things worked for me. Like I know I can't eat a piece of fish at night and feel satisfied the next day. Like I get hungry pretty quickly. So it's taken me a while to kind of figure out my way of eating and what's very satisfying to me, and when I need more fat in my meat and when I need maybe a little less fat in my meat. So just kind of getting to a place where I really feel like I understand my diet. It took me about a year. So I think about 2 years in now. And I will also say with COVID, as everyone probably has, I've fallen off the boat a couple of times here and there, but I have noticed that it hasn't affected me in a negative way. It's not ideal. It's not, eating some things that are not on the carnivore diet. Again, it's not ideal. I don't feel great, but it's not like it's detrimental to my health. I don't feel like it's going to make something flare up at this point. So I do feel like, a good, very dedicated 2 years, it took time for my body to really heal and to get better. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people, they hear all the good stuff that happens when you start eating meat, basically, but they're not patient. They don't fully understand that sometimes it takes a long time for the healing to happen. And so I love how you're figuring out and you're experimenting and you're changing as you change. I think that is so incredibly important, and so many people don't do that. So kudos to you. Okay, one last question. Out of all the benefits that you noticed, what was the one thing that stood out in your mind that you found shocking?
Besides my psoriasis, which was obviously physically just challenging, having red, itchy scales all over your body for long periods of times, sometimes several years. I think I went for 3 years without any clearing up whatsoever before I went carnivore. Besides that, and that's pretty big because that was a huge challenge for me to overcome just on a daily basis, like waking up and wanting to put on clothes because it was actually painful to put on clothes. besides that, the thing I was shocked by, I didn't expect, and I don't think I even realized that I was dealing with, was the fact that I was getting a cold or having a sinus infection, every time the seasons change. So 3 or 4 times a year, I was getting sick, thinking that that was normal, thinking that, yeah, we all get sick when the weather gets colder. And I have not had one cold, not even a sniffle, not even a feeling of I'm feeling like I could get sick in 2 years. I haven't felt that at all. I wake up every day feeling good. I did not know that that was even possible. So that is the biggest shocker for me, like to never have to think about cold season again. Those things are, we've become trained to just believe that's normal, and it's not. And I have felt pretty amazing for 2 years straight. So
That is great. And you're absolutely correct. The new normal. That is not so normal.
yeah,
So you're right. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for joining us. And I appreciate you sharing your success story with us.
of course, I'm happy to share. I don't know that this is for everybody, but I will say it worked for me. It's working for me. It was really powerful, and it makes a lot of sense to me. The more I've learned, the more I've researched, the more I think about where, ancestrally where we came from, the more I'm like, oh yeah, this is how humans are supposed to eat. So, it worked for me, and I'm really happy to share my story, hoping that it can help someone else.
Oh, no doubt it will. I think the more we share, the more people will see that this is a viable, way of living, even if we're told that's not so much the truth, the
Great.
normal. Well, thanks again, Amy, and you have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much. You too.
Bye.